As a former recruiter, I feel reference checks are a colossal waste of time for everyone. But some employers still want them. And so today I will talk about how to get references so that you can get the offer. Hi, I'm Shelley Piedmont, a former recruiter turned career coach, and I want you to thrive and not just survive your job. I was a recruiter for 2 decades, and doing reference checks were a part of our process. But did I find that it was really helpful for selecting the best person for the job? Absolutely not. I thought it was a big waste of time. And I'm going to tell you why. The idea behind reference checks is to have another voice in the process. This is somebody who knows you, who has worked with you, and they can talk to a future employer about what they observed and what they experienced. So, in concept, it kind of makes sense to do that because it's just another piece of information to help that employer decide whether the person can do the job. But in reality, it doesn't do any of that. People have learned to pick people that they know are going to give a good reference, even if that's not their true belief in the person. Those people are giving information to a prospective employer, and it usually just confirms everything that that employer wants to hear. That they're good at problem solving, they can fit in with the culture, they have good relationships. And so they don't really get good information from the reference checks. So it's just usually an exercise of checking off the boxes that you did it. No one really looks at it, and it's just, did we do them? Yeah, we did them. Okay, let's move on and make the hire. That is not a good use of anyone's time. Lastly, I want to talk about why hiring managers in particular don't want to act on even negative information coming from a reference check. You see, hiring managers, they have expended a lot of time in that particular person. And usually when you do a reference check, it's the last thing before you're going to extend an offer. So they have made up their mind that they really want to hire this person. And so if they see a kind of reference or something that's negative, then in their mind they're going, okay, then that means I might have to choose my number 2, which is not my preferred person. Or if I don't have a number 2, I'm going to start all over again. Both of those situations they want to avoid because that's just not optimal for them. So there's a tendency for hiring managers to look at those references and think to themselves, well, you know what? I thought this person was good. Maybe people on the hiring team thought this person was good. So I'm going to discount what others are saying because maybe that was a one-off. Or maybe that is not going to be the situation here. So that really doesn't need to be looked at really hard because it's just not applicable. So they'll tend to discount what they see on paper or what they hear and go with the person anyway, which defeats the point of doing references as kind of a additional piece of information from somebody who knows them to let you know whether they might be a good fit. If you like this information, I always appreciate hitting that like button and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It really helps. Some employers still want references, even though I think it's a waste of time. So if you find yourself in the situation where you're asked for references, let me give you some key things to do to make that whole process a success. First, You want to get the people who can act as references. Most of the time, they're looking for at least 2 to 3, and they would like people who have supervised you. So if you've got 3 supervisors, awesome. But for many people, that's a stretch. Either they haven't got 3 bosses, or they maybe have, but they've lost track of them and they don't know where they are. Okay, so if you can't get 3 bosses, the next best thing is to find people who depended upon you for their success. Okay, so in that category could be your boss's boss, or it could be somebody in a different department, and you were working on projects and something like that they needed you to do your job so that they could get what they needed done. Or you could have a client that you worked with, or a supplier or a vendor. Those are all categories of people that you could tap to be a reference. If you don't have any of those, and especially if you're kind of entry level, a professor, an advisor, and you can also mind your volunteer work. If you have somebody who's been supervising you in a volunteer position, that's another person that could be a reference. The next thing you want to do is contact all of these people, and you want to ask them if they would be a reference for you. Don't assume people will want to do it. You need to make sure you ask them and that it's voluntary and that they want to do it. And you want to get all of the contact information from them. So their email address, their phone number, how they can be contacted easily for references. You also want to let them know who likely is going to contact them. So especially if they get a phone call and they don't know who this is, that they can go, oh yeah, I was expecting something from this organization. What you want to do in that conversation is get a sense of whether they will give you a positive reference. You don't want to ask anybody to do this that you find out maybe they're a little lukewarm about you. That's not helpful at all. And yes, it does happen where somebody acts as a reference and they don't have like all that many great things to say about you. So don't set yourself up for any problems. Pick only people that think positively about you. The next thing is, in that conversation, tell them about the organization. Tell them about your process for hiring, who you've talked with. What are the hot buttons that this organization has? What are they looking for? You may be able to have some idea of what they may ask of the reference. What you want to do is talk to your reference about how they might answer some of the questions that they get. Specifically, if you've talked in the interview process about different projects you've worked in or some of the challenges you face, remind your reference about what you talked about and how that might be applicable to them. And then tell them about what this organization wants to hear about you. You're sort of priming the pump to make sure that they're talking about what you think is important for that organization to hear. That's helpful for them because oftentimes a reference doesn't really know, well, I don't know, what do you want me to say? Tell them what you think that organization wants to hear. Give them examples because they might forget, and that will be helpful for your reference and helpful for you to make sure that what is said is very positive and in line with what the organization needs. Do yourself a favor, go that extra mile. It will be worth it. What you want to do is be prepared. Now, Many organizations just don't do them anymore because, as I said earlier, they don't find there's a good return on investment. But there's still organizations that do them, even if it's a check the box exercise. And so you want to be prepared, and you want to make sure your references are going to give you a good report card, because that is what the hiring manager wants to hear so that they are confident to go ahead and give you the offer.